we're gonna start with our next talk. Kirils Solovjovs is gonna tell us something about toll of personal privacy in 2018.
Privacy is dead. You hear it a lot these days, but it's true. I found this is a tweet from this year. This is one of my favorite tweets this year. So People's Daily in China, that's a news outlet there, markets surveillance equipment for schools, tries to sell it, right? Tries to sell the idea how good it is to use surveillance equipment in your classroom to actually improve the performance of scholars. Here is one of such classrooms. Here's the camera, and here is the control panel. So you see the number of students, you see different statistics, and for each student and group, you can actually see the mood of each student. Are they excited about what you're telling them, like you are right now? Thank you for that. Or are they sleepy? Are they angry? So privacy truly is dead, but luckily for some of us, we live in the pinnacle of human rights, which is, of course, Europe. So some might say, yeah, that is China being China. You know, they do this stuff all the time. They have the social credit system and another different aspects. So what about Europe? Well, I truly thought that in Europe we have it good. But when preparing this presentation, I actually came to the conclusion that it's all terrible, even in Europe. So first of all, let's look at visas. I've never been to the United States because I don't find it particularly attractive to give foreign government my fingerprints. I find it strange that they would want that. Well, 9/11 has screwed things up for us. Recently, I learned that many countries, many nationals of many countries coming to Europe actually do have to give up their fingerprints to get a visa or to enter the country. I was completely oblivious to this fact. I didn't know that we're doing that to our visitors. So in fact, it's not only China, it's not only US. Let's look at something that each of us has to deal with when living in Europe or living in any modern society, rather, biometric passports. So I come from Latvia, and when biometric passports were first created, they moved from not requiring a fingerprint to storing fingerprint only in passports. That was the idea. That is the minimum requirement that's been mandated by the aviation industry. You have to have a fingerprint in your passport. That's it. And some countries in Europe, I think Germany might be one of them, actually do that as a minimum requirement. So they only store the fingerprint in the passport, which was what the law said when we got the new passports in Latvia. Well, I snooped around. I mean, not hacker-like. I sent some letters. I asked some information from the government when I had to get the passport. And it turned out that they actually also stored the hash in the database just in case. So not only in the passport, even though the law did not specifically allow for that. And while I was snooping around, a new law got created, law on storing biometric data. And now suddenly it was mandated to store everyone's fingerprints in a database. Now, understand that what I'm telling you right now is heavily dependent on your background, on where you come from, what are the traditions in your country. For Latvia and many of the Western post-Soviet countries, it was traditional that your fingerprints were taken when you became a criminal, when you get arrested, when you get convicted. So I thought it's going to be a sharp change in society at the point when we introduced these passports and we try to store all the fingerprints. But I was unpleasantly surprised. Me, my friend, and some other handful of people were the only ones who were actively protesting this move. Now, we have it in law saying that you can store and you should store the hash in the database. But I heavily suspect that what's actually happening is they're storing the whole damn fingerprint in the database. I've requested my data, and sure enough, there it was. The format is a bit strange, but analyzing it, it's a whole fingerprint, which means what? Which means this privacy problem, privacy blunder, leads to real risks. It depends on, you know, how fair and how good is the police in your country. I mean, if you live, I like to think that those countries are outside the EU. If you live inside lawless country or let's say a military state where police really want to get their way and they think you did something or they just don't like you, they could in theory pull that fingerprint of the database and put it on a file with some dead guy's case, and you go to jail or get hung. So that is a problem for me. Okay, let's look at the private sector now. So banks obviously know what you buy. How many of you have used a banking card in the past 1 week? Okay, how many of you haven't used the banking card in the? Okay, wow. Oh, thank you. That's cool. We have 6 people in the audience and me, so that's seven people. Anyway, for these 7 people, I'll tell you what happens if you, or should I tell it for the rest of the audience? So what happens when you actually use the cards? As you know, banks of course know where you shop, and these days I noticed that people have equated in their mind the banking card with cash. So you don't really do the thing where you gather a lot of produce and then you go buy it all together. You just buy it casually, right? You want a coffee, you buy a coffee. Bank says it's a coffee shop, so you probably bought a coffee. You want to buy some sex services, you buy sex services, right? So bank says sex service shop, or you know how they're called, right? So banks actually have this information about you, and it is once again problematic. It's not the only thing problematic about banks and cards, of course, but privacy-wise, that's what it is, right? The second thing is, of course, they are in control. So if we look at cashless society, which is a trend happening in some Nordic countries in Europe, Sweden, for example, and also under discussion in Latvia, cashless society basically means that there is no cash, either de facto or legislative-wise. And that would mean that private organizations, banks are private in most countries, private organizations will get to tell you what you can or can't do. It's not in their interest, of course, to block your transactions altogether, but say, I would imagine that if a country moved to completely cashless society, we would actually see steep increase in banking fees at that point. Because if you want to buy stuff, why don't you pay 200 euros per year? I mean, some people probably already pay 200 euros per year to have a card. I quit using my banking card when the fee got up to 20 euros per year. I thought that's too much for nothing. Nick, you got free card? Yeah. Nick Farr here says that he has his card is free, right? That's not what happens in Europe, at least in countries around my country. You have to pay for that. You have to pay for the card. But of course, to get people to actually use cards, I don't know. Some of you are old enough to remember how it all came in. For example, in Latvia, this trend came in the 90s, and it started with the state service people. So if you were working for the state, you had to have an account at one point, because cash was there for a long amount of time, right? And you were paid in cash, which is by the way absolutely legal. I hate this trend right now when anti-corruption people are saying, hey, he's paying cash, probably he doesn't pay taxes. My company pays cash, but we pay taxes because we just don't want to feed banks. So don't equate paying cash with not paying taxes, with avoiding taxes. Anyway, so back then cash was the de facto payment standard, right? And everyone was being paid cash. So the banks came in and they said, hey, let's do it like that. We're gonna open free accounts. We're gonna give free cards to all state employees, and you legislate that state employees can only get paid in credit, so by bank transfer, and that's what they did. So that's how it happened. And then 10 years later, which is surprising, it took like at least 10 years. 10 years later, you have to start paying for stuff. You have to start paying for your card. You have to start paying for withdrawing your money off your card. Actually, what was the actual event that got me move away from banks was when banks said, we want you to pay money to get to your money. And 6 months later, they said, we want you to pay money to add money to your account. So that didn't make sense to me at all. So I want to give bank my money, and they want me to pay. So anyway, I decided banks are crazy, and I don't want to do anything to do with them. Anyway, back to privacy. So banks know what you buy. It's appalling. So that's something to think about. Also, banks, as we've seen recently this year, collaborate in online profiling with other companies. I hear it happens a lot in the US, not so much in the EU, thanks to privacy-conscious attitude. But online profiling all by itself is actually hard to avoid. Even when we live in the EU, we can't actually not use Facebook. Well, we can. I don't use Facebook, but we can't do that without any consequences. And that's what the second part of my talk is going to be about. I'm going to talk about consequences of choosing to save your privacy by doing or not doing some specific actions. Now, online profiling, of course, means that you get some free stuff. Here's a product. You're being sold to some people, some companies who actually want to pay some first party to provide you a service so they can gather data about you. But cool stuff. I'm from the EU, and EU fixed online profiling in May 2011, the famous e-privacy directive, which means basically that you go to a website and it says we use cookies, and so it's fixed. You don't really get any buttons on that, or any options there. You know, you either accept the cookies or you don't open the website. So that kind of didn't work. Luckily, EU fixed that in May 2018, which is GDPR, which brought us new type of alerts. So now the alert has to include the word privacy policy. And you actually are starting to get some buttons. So if the if the system that you're using is if they're well intentional, right? If they want you well, then you actually have some easy to use buttons. If not, then you get something like this, where you click one link, then you can go to read the whole text. Somewhere there's something that you can do. Well, it doesn't work yet. I hope they're going to fix it. But for now, so online profiling is actually not fixed. Okay, let's move back to real life, right out of the internet. So CCTV. The presentation, the middle part of the presentation is about the EU, and thankfully Brexit hasn't happened yet. So the great example about CCTV is, of course, UK. This is a real ad by the real Crown government done in the UK. Secure beneath the watchful eyes. It looks like something from dystopian novel, right? To prove that it's real, here's one that's actually been taken through a glass, so you can see. I mean, you can get those like posters online, but I wanted to show you the photos, so to make it more believable. It's true. More CCTV means more security for you. So that's happening, and it's not only happening in the UK. I mean, it's also happening in other European countries, and it's happening in all around the world, in all developed nations, especially in the capitals. So that's why I prefer moving somewhere away from the capitals, where people don't have that much incentive. So not so many bad guys around, not so much free money to spend on bullshit technologies, and there are not so many cameras. Okay, but we, of course, everyone in this room knows that privacy is really for criminals, right? We don't actually need privacy, right? Not really. In fact, there was this article written in Politico just around the date when GDPR came into effect. It was titled "Privacy is Power." You can look it up. You can read. It's not long, but I got 3 sentences out of that article that I want to read to you. Privacy is power dynamics between the individual, the state, and the market. So that is your tool to actually be able to exercise your rights when you are being made the product. As recent scandals have illustrated so vividly, privacy is also about the autonomy, dignity, and self-determination of people. Again, not becoming the product. Data protection must seek to mitigate the inherent power imbalances between people and those that collect, process, and profit of their data. So, I have spent more than the 5 past years zealously fighting for my privacy rights. I've gotten a lot of things as a result of that. Yeah. Some good reactions, lots of bad reactions, and I'm going to go through some of the choices that I made during my fight for my privacy. And for some of the slides, you'll see a red line going all over the slide. That means I've considered that choice, but I decided because of the huge cost of making that choice not to do that. But that's a choice that's there on the table. And after the presentation, each of you can make your own choices regarding each of those points and knowing the consequences, of course, and be more private. Okay, so let's start with simple things. This is IT security conference, right? So let's start with IT. Operating system. I moved to Linux right after Windows 98 second edition was not supported anymore. I moved to Ubuntu Linux. Then they screwed up majorly. There was spyware in there. So if you use your search bar where you can search for files, like for example, confidential murder plans of Kennedy, and you type that in and it goes to their servers. So I moved to Linux Mint. The cost here, and I'm comparing Ubuntu with Mint here, is of course slower software updates. So if you use a major distribution, staying in Linux world, then you get faster updates. If it's a fork that is still heavily dependent on the original, then you will get slower updates, which is a security risk. But that's a balance that I take there, right? Ubuntu hasn't been that good recently as well. They also included some ads, I hear. It was this or last year. You logged into your shell and then you get an ad for some film or something. So their choice. Anyway, continuing with IT, browsing habits. So before being privacy conscious, I was browsing the internet with JavaScript and Adobe Flash allowed. It was before Adobe Flash got like 20 new exploits every year, but still, it was there. Right now, I browse with no Flash. I don't have it like installed at all anywhere, except some virtual machines I use for testing, security testing. And I'd use no JavaScript except pre-approved sites. So what I get as a result is very limited and ever-narrowing choice of e-shopping and online services. That's usually what I see when I open up a web page. So please at least add the NoScript tag so I know that you don't want me there. Thanks to Hetty who has done that to his page. So don't do that. But that's the reality. I mean, it's not about developing web pages. It's about using what you have, and without JavaScript you can't use that. With JavaScript, of course, what you get are trackers. What you get are potential exploits. The whole idea of a web page executing full Turing machine on my device when I open it up seems a bit strange to me. Then cookies. So before I talk about the slide, so this is real, right? That's a real video of me trying to submit a form using Google CAPTCHA. So watch that carefully. Before being privacy conscious, I would accept and honor all cookies. Now I have my browsers configured to only accept temporarily first-party cookies. As a result is that reCAPTCHA hates me. So every time there's this reCAPTCHA, which is supposed to make things easier, what happens is I actually have to click the damn checkbox. It always pops up, and then here I've all of those are roads. So they're out of roads or whatever. Let's submit. So the street signs, right? That's the one I get most often, and I can never get it right. I mean, I kind of click on all the parts where there's at least a part of a street sign, right? But it never works. I mean, maybe there are like 1 million people like me around the globe who are doing this, and we're just doing live recognition for Google cars. So yeah, it takes some time, but it's gonna end soon. Either I'll get bored or it will actually accept my submission. So still at straight saying there. Oh, this one's good. So I looked at it. It looked like a poster. So it's kind of not a street sign, right? It's like, I don't know. We don't have that in Latvia. because at least they could show you pictures from your own country, so you can, understand what the street sign is supposed to look like. Still on street signs, and there's a small piece down below too. So I don't know. Do you guys ever experience that? Okay, so here we have one on the left, one on the right, obviously. So it takes some time. Luckily, it doesn't make me do any fancy stuff. I remember at the beginning of reCAPTCHA, this version of reCAPTCHA, you had to recognize animals or food or, oh, yeah, okay, so success. And usually it takes about 3 or 5 tries, but the funny part is when I made this video for the presentation, it was the first try. I didn't have to wait for it. It was the first try, and that's how long it took. But usually it's 5 or 6, but that's still damn annoying. Okay, now for emailing. I used normal email like a normal person who's HTML. Now I have no HTML support in my emails. Why? Well, because again, tracking. Right, if they embed a tracking pixel and you load it up and you load remote images, even if they don't embed a remote image, HTML can still do bad stuff to you, right? Meaning what I mean here is that the filters in email programs for remote images aren't that good. So filter or checkbox to shut down HTML is actually, it works more reliably than the checkbox saying no remote images, because you can try to work around that. Well, my pen pals hate me. They don't get HTML. They don't understand why don't I use all the new sizes and colors of fonts available to communicate with them. And if they use Google, it's a complete nightmare, because apparently what Thunderbird does is when you reply to a Google person, Google algorithms can't detect where the original email is. So they get like this amount of email, and Google people they want everything compressed so that it only shows the actual reply. Speaking of Google, Gmail users never get my first email. So I have no idea what it is. I mean, usually after I say it to someone, they say, yeah, you have to configure that and that. I mean, I've gone to their guide on how to configure your email server, and I've been running my email server for the past 20 years. And it just doesn't work. It always gets into spam. So I don't know that many people who use Hotmail, but I could probably test that. It always goes in spam. I have everything set up as it should be. Well, they just don't like me because I run my own email service. I don't even have any lists, or I don't send any spam. I don't like spam myself, so I don't do that. Okay, let's. It's enough with all the online stuff. Let's go to kind of real life now. Phone. So I was using Siemens CX65 briefly when it became available. So it's one of those phones where you have color screen, you have a T9 keyboard, and you can have some apps written in Java. I moved over to using Nokia phones again. So this is Nokia 3330. I have it with me actually. That's my actual phone. The problem there is that if you use a phone like that, you're kind of safe from malware. I mean, you can still get over-the-air update to your SIM card where there's a Java machine and it can screw things up. But other than that, it's fine. There is really, depending on which year you bought your old phone, there's really no much chance of someone snooping on your conversation in the room where your phone is at. Which was the reason why I switched to these old phones. But the thing is, I carry 2 phones around right now. I carry this one and I carry the Nokia one. That is why I have it striked out here, because it doesn't serve the purpose anymore. The only reason I have it now is because I don't have 2 SIM card slots on my iPhone. So it did serve a purpose, but the cost was still no properly encrypted communications. So while you were safe from somebody snooping on your conversations in the room, you were totally not safe on someone snooping on the conversations you have over the phone, because you have no proper encryption. The good thing about Nokia compared to an iPhone, for example, is, at least this model, it actually shows you a warning when encryption has been turned off completely for the GSM network, which has happened sometimes, for me at least. But the bad thing is you can't install Signal, you can't install Wire on it and stuff like that. So that's a trade-off. Maybe for some of you it works. So I do have an iPhone, and there are mobile apps. Now, before I was into privacy, I didn't have an iPhone. There was, I think, the first iPhone, but I didn't have it, and I was stuck with my Nokia phones. So I moved to mobile apps, and what I do and how I protect myself is I try to control permissions quite tightly. I don't give GPS permissions except for a map application. It's not Google Map, obviously. It's an offline application. And I only turn off the actual GPS of the phone when I use it, or when I'm abroad. Like, for example, here in Serbia right now, I have it on all the time, but as soon as I'll be back in Europe, I'll be turning it off. I don't give access to contacts. I don't give access to microphone or camera if it's not needed by the actual app. Well, the result is that some apps don't work at all. And actually, I'm stuck in era about 10 years ago when the apps just appeared. Those apps work well, but some of the communication apps don't really want to work. So, for example, WhatsApp. I tried using it for a while. I could get messages and calls, and that's it. I couldn't start a new chat, and I couldn't call anyone because, well, no access to contacts. And I used it like that. Then I pushed an update that actually broke it, and it just crashed every time upon launch with no access to contacts. Luckily now they fixed it, and I found some workarounds. I'm gonna talk about social networks shortly, so the workaround for those of you who do use WhatsApp and are interested in it, if you don't give access to your contacts, how can you chat with a new person, at least on iPhone? So what I do is I use a standard phone app. I type in their phone number with the international prefix. I call them briefly. Then I go to my dialed numbers. I open up this entry. I long hold the call button. It shows me call via WhatsApp. I call that briefly. Then it's in my WhatsApp list of numbers, dialed numbers. Then I go there, and then I can press chat. And then I can start talking with them. And they ask, hey, did you call me? What do you want? Nothing. I wanted to chat with you. But it works. That's a workaround, and I do use that, and I'll talk about that later on. So before that, social networks. I was using IRC and I was using Facebook. I mean, there's nothing wrong with IRC, but we have better alternatives now. But I was actually on Facebook, and it was pissing me off, so I'm not on there anymore. Now I use XMPP, Wire, and Twitter. Why is Twitter better than Facebook? For me, Twitter doesn't provide you or lull you into the illusion that it's private or it's secure. For Twitter, the default setting is you post, everyone sees it. For Facebook, it kind of says, yeah, your friends may see it. I hear that today you have a bunch of controls, especially if you live in the EU. But still, even before that, it kind of said, okay, you're going to post this, your friends are going to see it, maybe friends of friends. It's not going to be out in the open, and you couldn't use a search engine to access it. Twitter is completely open unless you reconfigure it, and you can actually access it via search engine. So it's easier for me that way. That's my social network. So follow me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is down there. Mastodon. Yeah, I should do that. I should do that. That's because when I first read about it, it still wasn't moving. Mastodon. Now it has some amount of people using it. So I should probably do that. You can force me to do that later on. Okay, let's try that. So the result of me moving from Facebook to not Facebook is social exclusion and limited social circle. Meaning that, well, I can't reconnect with my old friends from, let's say, preschool. I really want to know what's up, what have you grown into, but everyone's on Facebook and I can't really search. And then Facebook killed its graph search. When I was out of Facebook, you could type facebook.com/graph, and even if you were not on Facebook, you could search people who work in childcare institutions and who like molesting children. You could specify where they work and what they like, and it would show you the list of people. It was a super nice search. They killed it because of privacy concerns. So anyway, for the social exclusion, it actually works quite well. I mean, maybe it works for me because some people like me around. Not all of them, but I'm likable to some people. So they really want me around. And instead of getting a Facebook event, I get a phone call, or sometimes they phone me up and we meet, and I get a personal invitation to a party, which is really nice, actually. But again, then there are parties where they just forget about me and I miss them altogether. Also, you can't have that many parties. I mean, if you run a lot of conferences over the year, then you don't have time to party. So, re-socializing, right? This happened last year or beginning of this year. This happened last year. I understood, damn, I've lost all my connections, all my friends, even the new friends I make at conferences like this one. I have to do something about that. So I reinstalled the applications that I had before, quite a while before, using a fake phone number. In Signal, Telegram, and stuff like that. Well, the cost is that I'm fully aware that anytime now someone will get one of those fake phone numbers as a real phone number to their phone and will take over my accounts for those networks. But hey, at least I get to chat with people. Then there's other people's apps, right? You can easily adjust your own life around your apps, but adjusting what other people do with your information, that is not that easy, right? So the problem was people were giving away my information to companies. What I did, I have private caller ID by default now. I mean, most people who I call regularly still know it's me, but because no one else called them as a private caller ID. Well, it's annoying to some people. And that's what I did. But I don't think it's enough, because still, people install WhatsApp. If they have it in their phone book, it goes there. Some of the Facebook apps, well, WhatsApp is a Facebook app too now, but some of the vanilla Facebook apps also apparently give the whole address book up to Facebook. So I really can't control that. So I guess you could have no friends, which would be both the solution and the cost to this problem. Then photos. Like 10 years ago, I loved both taking photos and being in photos. Now today, I'm always the photographer. I'm not in the photo, because people would usually upload that stuff to Facebook. I don't know why. You just take a photo and without asking, they upload it up to Facebook. And then I had this Facebook account, and once a week I would go through all the photos and untag myself, because I don't know if now you can actually specify that you can't be tagged at all. Back then you couldn't, and you just go through all of them and remove it. And I mean, you could always sue your friends, but that's like not a thing that people do, because legally they were in the wrong. So the easier version is just to explain, sorry, I'm not going to be in a photo, thanks. And now I don't have a lot of photos. So it gets strange looks when it happens, but it's okay. So for legal protection, obligatory GDPR slide. Companies were mishandling my data a lot. They were doing whatever they do with the data, right? Sending spam, selling it. Now companies are telling me that they aren't doing that. I mean, I'm quite sure they still are doing the same stuff. They just tell me, no, we're fine. We don't have your data. I actually spent super much time on that. I've calculated it's approximately 3,000 euros a year in lost productivity. So in calculating the work hours that I could work for a client in my company, this is what I spend a year fighting some small or large companies over this. I get a lot of don't you have anything better to do? So I got this SMS from a small loan company saying, sorry, what was the name? Sorry, Roger, your loan was not approved. I thought, damn, okay. I went to their webpage, I called them up on their number, and it was giving like P, and that's it. So it didn't work. Turns out they don't accept private caller ID calls. So what I did is I jumped on my motorcycle and went over there. Luckily, I didn't miss them, because it says working hours until 10 p.m. Apparently, there's a phone working hours, and they end up working at 6. But I was just in time. I was there like 5:50, and I asked them about that. Showed them the phone with the SMS. So Roger, your loan wasn't approved. They fixed it quite quickly, so they got a guy from the databases to come talk to me. He wrote down my phone number on a piece of paper and gave it back to me afterwards, which is nice. And came back with text, sorry, we don't have that in the database. It must be someone else sending SMS in our name. I said, okay. I mean, it's not unreasonable to send. I mean, it's easy to send an SMS with someone else's name as a source, right? So I said, okay, that's fine. 1 week later, I get SMS. Hey, Roger, we have a new deal. If you try to take a loan from us, you get free whatever at the shop this. I called them again, just in case. They still didn't fix the thing with the caller ID. I go there, and that is when I learned that they actually close at 6. I go there like at 7 p.m. and it's closed. I mean, someone's in there, the call center is in there, but they're not opening up. So I go there again, and every time I of course collect my receipt for gas, right? Because I spent gas going there. I go there for the third time, and they said again the database guys come out and it says, yeah, sorry, someone else registered. They probably mistyped the number. So I'm completely baffled by why didn't you see that last time? And don't you actually verify phone numbers before saving them in database? I actually asked that the guy, and he said, yeah, we verify phone numbers, but only if the credit is approved. If the credit is not approved, then we don't care. Then it just stays there. So they deleted my data. I asked for their legal department's email address to send them the receipts. I'm still to hear back from them. Maybe I should go there the first time. So I spent like, the first time, I didn't include the first time in the bill because, of course, it's not their fault, right, that someone registered wrong phone number. But when they lied to me and when they specified wrong working hours, that's their fault. So I spent like €2.50, so I'm determined to get it back of the company. So that's how I roll. Okay, visitors. Before I had friends coming to my home and hey, one guy said, hey, you don't seem to have a Foursquare. What's the name? Spot. Foursquare spot. You don't seem to have a Foursquare spot in your home. Let me make you one. He said, what the fuck? So now I invite only a small trusted circle of friends, like 10 people that get to come visit me. Well, the cost is that I don't have much space at home because I always bring something like a cognac or rakia back from trip, and it just stays there because I don't drink that much actually. Loyalty cards. I was using loyalty cards with real data. Luckily, I was smart enough not to include any contact information like emails or phones in there. But before I went to be privacy zealot, we actually had this small leak of a pizza company that leaked all their customer database as an XLS file on their web server. And I was there. So it's not what woke me up, but anyway, right now, I only provide fake data and use cloned cards. By the way, cool thing. I know the first part is legal in Latvia. You can provide fake data to a private company if it's not in malicious, if you don't have malicious intent. I don't know, but the second part that you actually clone a card and share it with someone, you just, if your friend is less privacy conscious, you just clone their card and use their card, and then you get the discount. They get the points, so win-win. The problem here is that I can't legally request anything about me. So it's not me on their database, so I can't ask, hey, what do you know about me? So it's a problem, but I try not to think about it too much, so not to waste precious time doing the thing. Okay, so then public transport. I was still a student back then, and we had what you see on the left. Like in Novi Sad, you have these tickets, paper tickets, that you buy. These are for a month, and you just show them when someone asks you to verify if you're entitled to drive. Well, then the local municipality needed to do a project. They just had to do a project. You can always grab some money, pocket some money when you do a project. They need to do a project, and they did this super expensive project on electronic tickets, which is fine. I mean, it has, from their perspective, it has their pluses, right? They can do statistics better and so on. Well, the thing is now, if I want to still use paper tickets, I couldn't get student discount anymore. I couldn't even get a normal price. I had to buy it in the bus, which cost €2. So if I were to use a student ticket, electronic ticket, compared to the in-bus ticket, increase is 6.6-fold increase. In 6.666 point increase in the cost. So that's the actual cost, and I've been doing that for a couple of years. I'm just, I mean, I'm fine with paying a premium for privacy, maybe 50%, maybe 100%, but almost 700% premium for privacy is a lot, and that's what we have to deal with there. Luckily for me, when they switched to the electronic tickets, and I was still a student back then, they also increased the price of all the tickets because they had to cover the multi-million project. And it turned out that driving your car, not only gas, but including what you have to pay for potentially to fix the car after a year, is exactly the same as you have when you buy the ticket. So I just switched to car. That fixed it. So for banking, I was being paid via wire transfer. I was using bank cards to shop. Now I only use prepaid cards. I use cash. I'm also paid cash. My company completely legally pays me and other employees who elect to do that in cash. I have some accounts that are mostly inactive. So the fun thing is, the sad thing is that gold customer status is unavailable. I mean, bank gave me gold customer status back when I was using it a lot, and I had it. So I go to the bank to fix something. I don't remember what, and I say, "Hey, I'm a gold customer." So they have this deal where you get first in line. So they said, yes, just swipe your card on the thing here, and you're gonna get a special ticket number. I said, I don't own a card. I don't have a card with you guys. They said, oh, sorry, you have to wait in line. So even though I was gold customer, I couldn't really use some of the privileges. Booking flights and hotels is quite hard. So the prepaid cards that I use, which are these nice anonymous cards that you can buy, at least in Latvia. You go into a shop, you pay them like €3, and you give them like 100, and they give you a card with €100 that you can only use until it runs out. So that's quite cool. I'm not allowed to use it for hotels, and I'm not allowed to use it for renting cars. Other than that, I can use it online or in real life. But booking flights, which are usually more expensive than the maximum limit on that card, or booking hotels is still a challenge for me. Renting a car is also a challenge because I think in this world it should be doable to rent a car with cash, but apparently they need you to have a card. And we have this taxi company called Taxify in the Baltic states, and they block all my prepaid cards. I add the card, and the stupid thing is they will not tell you that the card is blocked until you need this taxi. So I add the card. Like a week later, I need to take a night ride to the airport. So before I need to, half an hour before my flight, I have to get there. So I order a taxi. At that point, it says, sorry, your card is blocked. Add another card. I think, okay, no problem. I have a couple of these. I add another card. Again, it's all fine. And then I reorder the taxi. It's blocked. Add another card. So I bought a separate prepaid card for them, and it still got blocked. So then they said, you need to send us a picture where you're holding the card, your passport, and your face. And I said, you're crazy, guys. If I want to do that, I would go on Instagram. I don't need to do this here. So for CCTVs, I'm getting filmed by all CCTVs on street and in shops. One thing I considered doing was wearing a mask, which is absolutely legal until local government, national government started pissing their pants because of the Muslims coming in, and they wanted to adopt a law on not having face covered. Luckily for me and the Muslims, I lobbied enough, and the law didn't pass for now. So I can still do that, even though I rarely do that. But if I do have my bike helmet on, I don't take it off. But I don't specifically do that. But when you do that with a helmet, at least, security challenges you all the damn time. They just want you to take that stuff off. I don't know why they need that. But anyway, in Latvia, for now, it's still legal. You could, in theory, do that, but it's hard. I mean, you're going to be late because everyone's going to be stopping you and asking you to see your face. For biometric passports, so I told you a story about biometric passports. The alternative is not to give up your fingerprints, and the result is living without a passport and not getting to travel around. I actually have a fun story here. When biometric passports came about, I told you there was me, one other guy, and a handful group of other more remote people. So me and that guy, who, by the way, has recently finished his doctoral thesis in MIT and got a doctor's degree. We were still both living in Latvia back then when the passports came about, and we had a strategic meeting, thinking, what could we do to actually not give up the fingerprints? Because I mean, there are people without hands, right? They still need to get passports. We were not gonna cut off each other's hands, even though that would have worked 100%. I promise you. You can try that. But we did have a strategic meeting, so we came up with a list of possible solutions, and decided that he's going to take the top one, I'm going to take the top two. Cutting hands was not in there. So we went on separate dates to the government office responsible for handing out passports, and he went in there. So he asked a nurse to immobilize both his hands in a cast. He went in there like that, and a week later he went to get his new passport, and it was fine without the casts already. So my idea and my backstory was that I would mix cyanocrylate, it's a chemical legally available, with ink from a black marker, from permanent marker, and then I would just put my fingers in, get some on the hand, something like that. And my story was, well, I was painting something with very adhesive paint, and it's all black. The thing is, before that, I researched that they're using optical scanners, not the electronic kind. So it's just basically a photo. So if it's all black, super black, then it's black. I don't know what I did wrong, but they told me, hey, come back like in a week when it's worn off. So, apparently they were afraid to discriminate against people who at the moment doesn't have both his hands, but not against a person who doesn't have fingerprints. Okay, so yeah. Then creating photocopies of IDs. It's a very sensitive point to me personally. Before working with privacy a lot, I always said, yeah, of course you can copy my ID. You want a copy of my ID to rent something? Yeah, sure, here's a copy. You want a copy of my ID to make this transaction? Yeah, take it is. Taxify would like my ID. You want me to pose? You want me to smile? Yeah, sure. Right now, I just say, nope, I'm not going to do any of that. So what I get is good people are getting annoyed. For example, here in the hotel that I'm staying in, there's a really nice guy who owns the hotel, and I'm sad to annoy him, but every year I tell him, sorry, nope, you can't copy my document. Nope, you're not going to copy it. Write down anything you need for your legal stuff. Why do you need to copy it? I can't use Revolut or N26. I would love to. I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to open up to some of the new banking fintechs. But I can't do that because they require you to send a scan of their ID. I mean, I'm even happy to show them my ID in person. If someone here works at Revolut or N26, I can show you my ID. Get me an account. But I'm not going to send you a picture. I mean, if you send a picture of your ID to a company, to a startup, why can't they use that picture to prove that they're me to another startup? That's the part I'm not really getting. There was an incident in Belgium where I had to call the cops on clerks at the hotel. So I gave them my ID to check in. They said, we need to copy it. I said, nope, you don't need to copy it and you can't copy it. We did this exchange like 3 times. And then I said, okay. They said like, yeah, okay, fine. And then he takes my ID and runs off with the ID to the back room and copies it. I call the cops saying a guy stole my ID. He calls the manager. We have an exchange for like 10 minutes with the manager, and it's solved. So they give me the copy. I get to tear it up and leave with myself, and everything is kind of fine. Of course, most of the copying machines, large ones, have a hard drive, so I can't resolve that part. But yeah, and also a banker called me a bad name once when I was in a bank because I didn't want them to. So by law, banks are the institutions that actually can copy your ID in Latvia, but they wanted to scan it. I didn't like that. So, you know, because a copy is a copy. If you get a copy, you can write on it saying this has been handed by this person to this institution, this bank on this date. And if they try to use it again without some Photoshop skills, you will have all this stuff written all over your copy. If you just scan it and you can't write anything on it, they can just do the same thing. Some unfaithful employee can forward it on to a different entity, which is problematic for me. Anyway, so the final tally. If you do the stuff that will protect your privacy, you should expect for some of the solutions to carry this social toll. You will have challenges in communication with your peers, with other entities. You will probably face disapproval by peers in society. Your social circle might get limited because of the tools that you use. Financially, you will have limited choices online. For example, e-shops that don't work with JavaScript, or some limited hotels that accept cash to reserve a room. You will have increased transportation costs, like in my case, 666% increase. Their technological toll. Much more time will be needed to do the same things. For example, it's an extreme example, I agree, but I could, in theory, go to Serbia a month before to reserve a hotel, pay them cash, and go back and then come again. But yeah, access to new tech is impeded. You can't really use all the new gadgets like Amazon Echo, for example, because you're too scared that they're going to listen to what you're saying, which is actually what's written on the box. And you can't take part in the IoT craze, because most of the IoT things, they come with a connection to the cloud. Rarely you can get an IoT device that you can configure your own server to work with it. I mean, you can hack it, of course, which is what I do. I immediately flash. I do have some IoT devices. I immediately flash a different firmware and work like that. And you have no access to your own data if you use a fake name and alias to register for something. And international travel is not possible, of course, without a passport. So that is the final tally of personal privacy. And that is basically the problem here. So I have one more slide. What can we do to try to fix this? I mean, I gave a presentation just now on what can each individual do. What choices can you make to stay more private? But what can we do to fix the costs, to lower the costs as a society altogether? Convince legislators. Talk to your legislators, like I did, for example, on this case of hiding your face in public. Lobby and talk to them. If you don't know how to lobby, use social networks, or you can watch my presentation on lobbying. It's available on that site, kirils.org, down below. Develop privacy-conscious systems. If you get to be a Facebook developer, try to work internally. Okay, that's a large project. If it's a smaller project, try to work internally to make sure that users have privacy choices. If you're not a developer, demand that developers do that. Do not use software that doesn't respect your privacy. And don't be complicit. You have to stand up for yourself so that me and a couple of people are not the only ones fighting. And you can also lead by example. You can do that and people will ask you, why the hell don't you want to take a photo of yourself? You explain it to them and they might start thinking about that. So thank you very much for this. If there are any questions, please wait for the mic and I'd love to answer them.
I've got a comment on the passport issue. So there's this thing called emergency passport, like when you're at the airport and you discover that your passport isn't valid anymore, you can go there and request an emergency passport that will be only valid for a limited time, but it doesn't contain any fingerprints or whatever. So in theory, it should be possible to only live off those emergency passports without ever having to give up your fingerprints. But this was too much of a trade-off for me, at least.
Thank you. That is a really interesting idea. Yes, in Latvia you have to pay a fee and you have to go to an embassy to get such a passport. And you can't leave. At least in Latvia, you can't leave the country. So if you have to travel out of Latvia and you don't have a passport, you have to make a new passport. There is a fast way to make it. They do it in 24 hours. It costs, I think, 3 times more. So you can't travel out. But it would work for Latvia to travel in. If you're abroad, you can just, well, you can't legally burn your passport, but you can lose your passport by accident, and then you can pay a fee to get this at an embassy. And you also have to pay the fine then back home for losing your passport. So that would work in Latvia like that. But it's a good idea for countries that are set up a bit differently, yes. Yeah, it's quite expensive. Privacy is expensive, and I'd like to lower the costs.
Okay, thanks for the presentation. I have a question regarding this privacy versus ease of use of various services, like trade-off. So, for example, if let's say that you're traveling here to Belgrade and that you need to book a hotel, and that using this prepaid card that's not possible for some reason. What's your opinion on, like, I don't know, because in my at least that's my position. I mean, basically you are giving data, but there is also a question about the usage of, or actually the access to this data, actually gathering the metadata from how you use the services to which you have provided your data. So basically, what's your opinion on, for example, having like one bank account where you actually have given your data, but using that account only to book one particular hotel? Would that be acceptable in some sense or not? Thanks.
So, if I understand correctly, your inquiry, your suggestion is have a separate bank account and separate card for each hotel that you're staying at.
Or something like that, yeah.
Okay. Well, so my problem here with hotels is not one of not trusting hotels. It's not trusting the banks. So that is my threat model. So having even more accounts with the bank is problematic, right? Because other than privacy, if you read your banking contracts in most of Europe, I believe, you will see that the money on the account isn't your money actually. It's money of the bank. As soon as you hand them over money, or as soon as you get paid via bank, it's their money. They just owe you some money, and it's a huge difference legally. I mean, if I open a not saving deposit, but a safe box in a bank and put money in there, that's still my money. If I put it in my savings account, that's not my money anymore. So that's my problem there. And my solution to the hotels is a lot simpler. I just limit my choices, same as I do with JavaScript and online shops. I tick the checkbox saying does not require a credit card.
Okay, thanks.
So a popular theory that I don't think you touched on too much is that people who are very privacy obsessed actually ironically create a much larger data fingerprint for themselves by the fact that they're creating so many exceptions in the system. Do you have any commentary about that? And I know you didn't mention this personally, and I'm probably going to out you a little bit, but I know that you follow every possible procedure that there is anytime you encounter one where you can possibly ask somebody to delete your data. And in the process of that, and you describing all of the hoops that you jump through, I can't imagine how you don't create a larger data fingerprint and end up, serving effectively at cross purposes to what you're trying to do.
You're absolutely right here. My bigger goal is, at least I like to think that it is to change the system, to make sure that the system itself is privacy compliant by default. And by system I mean the whole world, the whole place that I'm living in, traveling about. So of course I can create some things. For example, so I had this shop that I never shopped at that sent me an email, like blah, 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 come shop with us. I politely sent them a reply, I don't want to receive your stuff, don't send me anymore, please delete my data. A month later, I got another email, right? And it happened a couple times. Third time I called them up, they said, yeah, we're going to fix that. Didn't fix. Fourth time, I'm not a lawyer, but I do know a lot about law. I sat down on my computer, I wrote an official document, I went there physically, gave it to them, and when you piss me off to the level of that I have to write an official document, I will try to make your life difficult. So I didn't just ask to delete the data. I asked to give me, no, you have all these official procedures that you can do. Give me all the data that you have, who were handling it, where did you get it, la la la, everything like that. The outcome I'm looking for here is not as much to piss them off, but to actually make them understand that it's easier for them to follow requests of people regarding their data next time. So, of course, I create a huge fingerprint in this example here, but next time this can happen to me or someone else, they will just delete the data. That's what I'm hoping for.
You said you're against the banks. How about ethical banking and some which are owned by a cooperative which you are part of?
Yeah, I have my own view on ethical banking, and when I'm older, like when I can't do anything else anymore, I have a plan to create a bank, but it would involve some lobbying. So currently, at least in Latvia, you have to have a huge capital if you want to create a bank. So my bank would look like that. To have an account on a card, you would have to pay a sizable fee, let's say 5 or 10 euros a month, and I'm okay to pay it right now. But in return, the contract would say that it's your money. All we are doing as a bank is taking your cash and providing it in digital form, and you can move it freely in both directions for the fee that you pay. Now, this kind of banking there would be no use for huge capital, but to do that, I'd have to lobby first for changing legislation. So that's my plan for retirement, create a bank like that.
So why is it that you don't mind giving a talk and being recorded visually and with your voice, giving away crucial information about your biometrics?
So it ties a bit with the answer that I gave 2 questions earlier. It's about consent, and it's about user choice. So I mean, today, looking back at more than 5 years of fighting, I think I don't even care about my private data so much. In some cases I do, but it's not about that. It's about changing the system. And I mean, no one except maybe Nick here would force you to come here and talk, right? Thanks.
That applause is for the changing the system line.
No one except Nick here would force you to come and give a talk, right? Because Nick is doing lightning talks. Please do subscribe. So it's a free choice. It's a free choice that I make. When I'll be dining later on with some of you guys, then it's a private space. I'm very chilling out. Then I don't want photos or videos. But now it's fine. Okay, I think we need to give floor to the next speaker because we are a bit over time. Thank you once again very much.